Morning, good afternoon. My name is Jackie O, and in today's video, I will be bringing you some of my commentary of one of the most talked about series at the moment, the Jeffrey Dahmer series. It was wild. If you haven't watched it, I've got you. I can tell you about 6 disturbing things that stood out to me about this series. But before we begin, I do want to go ahead and give a content warning, as this series itself, it gets very graphic. So just want to go ahead and let you know that. Now, these are some things that stood out to me and my personal opinion on what I think of the series. Now, if you do have some other different scenes that stood out to you, you can go ahead and maybe, talk about it in the comments. Let's stay respectful, everyone. Other than that, let's go ahead and get started. A background on the individual or the main character on this series. Now, his name was Jeffrey Dahmer. He was born on May 21st, 1960 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. His parents were Joyce Annette, a teletype machine instructor, and his father, Lionel Herbert Dahmer, a chemist. Now, some of the aliases are the Milwaukee Cannibal or the Milwaukee Monster. Now, Jeffrey Dahmer is a confirmed serial killer. He is responsible for 17 confirmed deaths. His killing spree did begin in 1978 and extended to 1991. He was arrested in 1991 and died on November 28th, 1994 in prison. So the Jeffrey Dahmer series is available in the US through the Netflix streaming service. It did air in 2022, and playing the Jeffrey Dahmer character is the one and only Evan Peters. Now, I did see him in other series also, such as American Horror Story. That was the first time at least I saw him, and I know he's been in many other series and other movies since then. So starting off at number 1, his erotic fascination did begin at a young age. Now, in this series, we do see the conflicting life at home for Jeffrey, his parents always fighting, his father being absent. With his, Lionel did try to find some common ground, which ended up with hunting or fishing, and also eventually the preserving of corpse, such as different animal corpse, which did come to Jeffrey creating a collection of corpses that he was able to preserve. Now, with this being said, there is a scene that Netflix does highlight, and there's a whole chapter about it, which is the fish scene. It does begin with Jeffrey and his father going fishing. Now, they catch a fish, his father goes ahead and cleans it up, and then Jeffrey asks for the opportunity to do so as well. He goes ahead, opens up the fish, he slices open the fish and takes out the organ. And this seems to trigger something in him. At least in my opinion, it looks like the series tries to give us that connection of when something awoke in him during that moment. And we see it when it fast forwards to a moment when Jeffrey is trying to find pleasure within himself, and he has to go into his memory, and he rewinds back to that moment of when he's cleaning the fish. He remembers the organs, he remembers the texture, he remembers the heart, and this gives pleasure for him. And this is where Netflix tries to put together, hey, that moment of that clean fish and that organs and the body parts, and Jeffrey trying to find pleasure. He rewinds back to this moment, and there's that moment was born where he connects body parts to pleasure. So that to me was disturbing on its own. Number 2, the first victim, Stephen Hicks, was a fantasy come to life. Now, at the time that Stephen Hicks comes into the scene, though Jeffrey was attracted to men, he had not explored his preferences at the moment. It seems like this was something he was struggling to accept. We see a couple of clips on what he does think the perfect moment for him would have been. He imagines himself meeting a stranger on the road, giving him a ride, and riding onto the sunset. Now, oddly, this happened when Stephen Hicks was hitchhiking to go to a concert. Jeffrey happens to be riding by and said, hey, do you want to ride? He says, well, yeah, I'm going to a concert. Why not? Then Jeffrey says, hey, you want to actually have some beer at home? Just go get some. Do you want to come along? And he was like, well, why not? I still have some time to spare. So they go back to Jeffrey's house. They drink some beer. Nothing out of the ordinary just yet, until that moment when Stephen Hicks is like, all right, my friends are waiting for me. I have to get to a concert. I gotta go. Are you gonna take me or not? If you're not, you know what? Peace out. I gotta go. And in that moment, that's when a conflict arises between the two men, leading on to the unfortunate death of Stephen Hicks. At this time, Jeffrey panics and he tries to conceal the body. That's not working for him, so he goes on ahead and dismembers the body. Now, throughout this process, it's not enough for him, so he goes ahead and throws it into the oven so that way the body parts are dry, and he goes ahead and hammers them down and then, disperses apart around the property. Like, what the heck? Like, I was like mind blown that he had dreamt about this or he had fantasized about this and it actually happening. Now, this was his first confirmed victim, and unfortunately, as we go along, we will see some more. Number 3, his obsession with the return of the Jedi and the exorcism. If you don't know, the exorcism number 3 tells the actions of a supernatural serial killer, right? So him watching this to prepare himself to go out there and actually bring this to life is just like mind-blowing. It's like, hey, this is just a movie. You don't have to go out there. Please don't go out there and do this. But unfortunately, he does. We see this in a lot of the posters or series. Jeffrey with the glasses, and in a lot of them, you also see these yellow eyes. So it comes from his use of yellow contacts. Now, let me tell you why. So it is said that his favorite character was the Emperor because of his evilness, to the point where he would wear those contacts before going out at times to feel powerful and kind of channel that in himself, which to me is just creepy. But yeah, I mean, he's a disturbing guy altogether, so you can imagine. Number 4, his number of confirmed victims, 17. Had 17 confirmed victims before he was actually stopped. And as you go through the series, it's so frustrating because at least in the series, there are some moments when you're like, they're gonna catch him now, and they don't. And he does it again, and you're like, this is the moment. This is when they're gonna catch him. And they don't, and he does it again. The youngest victim was a 14-year-old boy, and this did extend to other young male adults as well. Now, when they did raid his home, they did find numerous Polaroids of his victims, and just the fact that he kept pictures of his victims in their most vulnerable moments just shows that he clearly just saw them as objects, not as humans. And that just, to me, the fact that he preserved those moments through a picture is just disturbing. Number 5. Cannibalism and preserving of body parts. It is not uncommon for killers to keep objects of their victims, such as clothes, jewelry, even hair in some instances, to try to keep that moment with them, and then when they see it or when they have it, it takes them back to the moment of the crime. However, Jeffrey, being clothing or whatnot, which just wasn't enough. No, he went ahead and he kept body parts of his victims. In the series, they do question him as to why he kept body parts of his victims, and he goes on to say it's to feel close to them. They do show the police raiding Jeffrey's apartment. One thing that they do confirm in this series that his neighbors and police and anyone that got near his apartment did have in common was this distinct, disgusting, rotting odor. Now, at the beginning of the series, it does bring this up again, and this is when Jeffrey goes on to say, I got some animal meat in his freezer, and his freezer had broken down, and this is why it smelled horrible, right? Well, when they raided his place, they found out why it smelled so bad, and it wasn't that his freezer was broken. Oh no, it was not, because it was able to preserve human body parts, and this is why it smelled so bad. I'm telling you, they found from hearts to bicep to genitals and so forth. Now, when it comes to cannibalism, the series does allude to this through after the inspection of utensils did go on to consume humans. Number 6, last but not least, we have lobotomy. Yes, you heard me, lobotomy. As if his crimes were not enough, Jeffrey would go on to attempt to keep his victims alive to what he would call his forever zombie through drilling a hole in their skull and injecting them with different types of liquids in his attempts to keep them alive. His experiments were quite extensive each time he would attempt this. Now, the way he would go about this is he would find a victim and spike their drink, drug them, try to find a way to get them unconscious, and then proceed with this horrible deed. Luckily, he is dead. His killing spree is over. The series itself is interesting if you're into true crime. These were the 6 scenes or 6 parts that did stand out to me. If you like this, please give it a thumbs up. Like the last video, which I did of urban legends, to my commentary on true crime documentaries, true crime series as is in this. So thank you very much for joining in with me today. I will see you in our next one. So I will see y'all later. Bye.